We continue our talk about the life of Umar bin Khattab radiallahu an, when he was the Khalifa after Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu an, and we were talking about his life, especially in regards to how he was making sure that the governors were doing the job the way they're supposed to be doing. Jazakallah khair. And we talked quite a few things in the past couple of weeks in regards to the governors, the method of appointing a governor, the qualities that are supposed to be looked into the governor, and how Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh was not only appointing the best of the best, but also he was making sure that those just rulers that he had appointed, they were doing the task that they were assigned to do. Even though we were talking about some of the greatest Sahaba of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam who were appointed by Umar as the governors, but even then he wanted to make sure that the job is done the way it was supposed to be done. And what we see in that is it was not left for this way that, okay, we will make sure the job is done. Rather, if the job was done good, Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh rewarded them. And when they were not doing the job the way it's supposed to be done, then there was the consequences that they had to pay. And those two consequences, or if you want to call them punishment, they were according to the kind of the mistake or the errors that were made by those governors. And in some cases, Umar just wanted to make sure that if there were a better person available for the same job, then he assigned the job to the better person as well. Now, this is important for us to understand that the consequences of our actions as believers, as Muslims, we understand that the final accountability is in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we talk about the Day of Judgment. But at the same time, the system of Islam that Allah Azza wa Jal revealed to us through Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that system of Islam was not only for talking about that if you do not fulfill your obligations or if you commit a haram, then you will be accountable on the Day of Judgment. Rather, that system of life on the earth has to be governed according to Islam as well. And that entails as well, if the job is not done properly, then there could be consequences, there could be punishment as well. Now, of course, there are Orientalists and there are the enemies of Allah Azza wa Jal, enemies of Islam. They have used that small part of Islam, which is the system of uqubat, nidam al-uqubat. Uqubat means the punishment system does exist in Islam as well. There will be deceitful of us if we don't talk about that as well, part of Islam. So uqubat is part of Islam, punishment system is part of Islam, but it's not the whole, it's part of it. And that part, as I have mentioned in the past as well, that when we go towards the fiqh books, and the fiqh books can be multiple volumes, can be tens of volumes in some cases, and you find within those tens of volumes, there's a very small section that talks about the punishment. Because Islam is not like a system that was revealed just to punish the people left and right. Rather, it came down to give us a proper way of life that creates peace and harmony among the people. And it provides a just social system, a just economic system, a just educational system, educational policies, ruling system, or judiciary. All those systems are given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I'm using a word system along with just the do's and don'ts. There's a difference between to think or take Islam as just a bunch of do's and don'ts, or we to look at the system, Islam as a system of life, meaning it gives us do's and don'ts which are regulated by different means. And when we read about these Khulafa Rashideen, we should not forget that they were the ones who were ruling over the people and they were governing over the people. They were making sure the laws of Allah Azza wa Jal were implemented properly. Hence, as the state under Umar's leadership was expanding at a very exponential rate, at that time, more institutions had to be formed to administer the job of such a huge land and such a huge population as well. So now, for that, Umar could have not been just run everything from Medina. So he had to assign people. As a matter of fact, in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, when the Yemen, for example, was open, at that time Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent Mu'adh bin Jabal radiallahu anh as one of the governors, and the other places as well. There were different governors. For example, the governor of Mecca was also there. Itab was the first one, and so on and so forth. So we find different areas had different governors assigned in time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And of course, when the areas started increasing, then more institutionalization and administration was required. Now, when Umar was doing that, he understood that even though his neck is on the line in front of Allah Azza wa Jal, when he is giving the task to somebody else to fulfill, is still Umar is accountable to make sure the tasks are done fairly and justly by the ones who has appointed. Now, for example, when we look at this, Umar radiallahu anh, he continued to watch his governors that he assigned at different localities. And today we wanted to talk about that when they were falling short of their jobs to be done, at that time Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh was taking actions. And it is very important to have accountability as well. Look, we go to work, for example, and we understand that if a person or people who are not fulfilling their tasks the way they're supposed to be doing, there's an accountability factor involved. So we cannot do the job that Allah Azza wa Jal has hold us accountable, and we'll do it this way that when we have time we'll do it, we don't have time we won't do it. No, it has to be the highest priority for us. As a matter of fact, we should be living our life in a manner that our life is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are worshipping Allah Azza wa Jal throughout our life. Now everything that we have, it's supposed to be around worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and whatever Allah allows us, for example, when we go to work, that can become an act of worship. It's an act of ibadah if we do it the way Allah Azza wa Jal has commanded us. We go get married, that's part of ibadah if we do the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us. Same way any action we undertake. But besides that, just to live like an animal can live also, to eat, drink, and have babies and die. Or Allah has assigned us a role on this earth, that the one who not only live by Islam, but call people towards Islam and make sure others also live by Islam. Okay, so among them, now Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh, he dismissed governors as a result of their falling into errors. For example, he dismissed governors when he found out that one of the governors, he heard that some of his poetry, the shi'r he was saying, he was using wine as part of his poetry. For him, that was sufficient to remove them from this task of the one he is the governor of. Because look, it seems like today we find many of the poetry, even the Muslim scholars, they're saying, not the scholars, the Muslim poets, they are talking about the poetry, and some of them, they use that in a majazi way, which is a metaphoric way. They try to use the wine. But here, Umar radiallahu anh, we are talking about a sahabi of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One of the greatest sahabi to the point Rasulullah said, if there would have been any other prophet after Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it would have been Umar radiallahu anh. About him, Rasulullah sallallahu said, when Umar takes a path, shaitan changes his path. He would not come in the path of Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh. So he was very keen on making sure that the governors that he has assigned, they are doing the job the best way, and they are not giving any kind of a mean for people to misunderstand the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so one time he dismissed one of his governors when he interfered in matters that did not concern him with regards to his troops. So what did he do? He went to the people and he started asking them about all the bad deeds that they have done in their life. Now, and they started telling him all the sins they have committed in their life. Umar, when he found out about this, he removed him, and he said he will never make him a ruler over the people because what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has covered, who are we to uncover them? As a matter of fact, we have been commanded, as Rasulullah says, it says in one of the hadith, that man satara muslima, whoever covers the defects or the mistakes of a Muslim, سَتَرَهُ اللَّهُ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَيَوْمِ الْآخِرَةِ. That whosoever covers the mistakes of others in this world, Allah will cover his mistakes in this dunya and in the akhirah. So this is why Umar, when he found out, he wanted to make sure that these are not the kind of a people we should be having over us, the one who will be ruling over the people. Now, when he did this, it's not some of the things we might find it as if it's not a big deal in today's time, the way we're living. Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu. Again, when I'm mentioning these names, it's important to understand. Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas, as I mentioned last week as well, he was one of the greatest Sahaba of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yes, and he was from the Ashra Mubashara, the 10 who were given the glad tiding in this dunya. He was the governor, and Umar found out that he has built a gate outside his house, a door outside his house. Now, the reason was he was living very close to a marketplace, and he wanted to avoid the noise coming into the house. Okay? When Umar found out, he sent Muhammad ibn Maslama, radiallahu anhu, another great Sahabi of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he said to him, go and collect some firewood and burn down that door. Why was that? The reason was that door becomes a barrier between the people who want to meet the governor, to meet the one who is the caretaker over the people. Now, subhanAllah, imagine that from today's time, talking about door, you have thousands of guards around to protect, not just to protect the noise coming in. They want to make sure people do not come close to the person who's a ruler. And that's because of their deeds. The kind of deeds that they are doing, they themselves are very well aware of that what will be the response of the ummah towards them. Hence, they defend themselves in that manner. But look, the way we find in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and after that Khulafa Rashidin as well, that they were very much close to the people, they were living among the people, and they want to make sure that the channel between them is open. So how can a person rule over the people if he cannot feel the pain and the pleasures the people are going through? You cannot be a just ruler at all, because if you are living your luxurious life and the people are suffering from poverty and whatsoever things, how can you come and solve the problems of those people that you cannot even feel them? I'm not saying that the governor has to be the poorest person among them, then he can rule. No, but he has to feel them at least. He has to have a communication. He has to know how people live their lives. And this is what the result of that was. Now, there's a report about Umar appointed that Mujashi' bin Masud in charge of some work. And here he heard that his wife was buying continuously new furniture, meaning she was refurnishing the house over and over. His wife's name was Al-Khudayra. So Umar wrote a letter to him, and he said, from the slave of Allah, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh, he said, to the slave of Allah, the commander of the faithful, to Amir al-Mu'mineen, to Mujashi' ibn Mas'ud. He says, Assalamu alaikum, I have heard that Al-Khudayra, his wife, keeps buying new furniture, okay, or furnishing the house. So he said, when this letter of mine reaches you, I urge you not to put it down until you have torn down the wall hangings that you have. Now, Mujashi', he had still holding the letter in his hand. He goes to his wife, and she can see the anger on the face of Mujashi'. And he asked her to leave. And when she left, the other guys who were there to deliver the letter and other people were there, he asked them, wherever you find these hangings on the walls, tore them down. And while they were doing all this, he was still holding the letter of Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu. And the reason was, they understood also, the one he appointed as governors, that the ta'ah of the Amir, the obedience of the Amir in the halal things, of course. There is no disobedience in doing the haram. Meaning, Obedience is also only in ma'roof, only in the good things. And there is no obedience in the disobedience of the Khaliq, or in the ma'siyah, or in the sin, as the hadith of Rasulullah summarized this way. Now, as I said, he took care of different problems in a different way depending on the place and the time that the problem was. One time Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh, he visited Sham. And within the Sham there were different areas, and Yazid ibn Abi Sufyan radiallahu anh, he invited Umar al-Khattab to his house. And he wanted to eat with him. When Umar entered the house, he saw some wall hangings. Umar started to tear them up, saying, "Woe to you, do you dress walls with materials that could be used by people to shield themselves from the heat and the cold?" Now, the time and age we are living in, sometimes we find this, oh, that seems like too much. The thing is, we have disconnected ourselves from Allah Azza wa Jal in a manner that sometimes we see the things which were done by the one who were from the best of the generation. Talking about the best generation was the generation of the Sahaba, Ridwanullah alayhim. And among them, these Khulafa Rashidin were the best of the best. So when we talk about Umar al-Khattab's actions, yes, we always make sure that the action that is done, it is from the Shara. Now, similarly, when we see Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh, he visited some of the governors of Sham besides Yazid ibn Abi Sufyan. And he struck some of the governors because of some deeds that they committed. He used to carry a stick. Okay? When Umar would go somewhere, he would carry a stick. And if he finds the person is doing something wrong, and he would apply some of the punishment or ta'zir from the Khalifa right there. So he struck some of them. So during that visit, he entered the house of one of his governors and found that they had too many possessions. So Umar got angry and started hitting him with his stick. Similarly, Umar visited to Syria. Some of the governors came to meet him. First one who met him was Yazid ibn Abi Sufyan, as we talked about, and Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah radiallahu anhu. Then Khalid came riding horses and wearing fine garments and did not befit the Mujahideen. So Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh said, it's not even 2 years have passed that we are able to get belly full of food. And you have already changed like this. And then Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anh, he said, under these fine garments we still have the same things, same weapons we have. When Umar heard that, Umar let them go. In this case, he said, then it's fine. That's not a problem. Now, as he sometimes hit the people, sometimes he took the wealth away from these governors, sometimes he actually demoted them, some of them were removed from the position as well. Umar al-Khattab used to use this method, which is the demoting of the people from their positions. So one of the governors was Iyad ibn Ghanam, and he heard that he had acquired a hammam, a bath. You know, the bath, they used to have a different way, and he made it for a specific people can use that. When Umar found out that he is living this kind of a life, and he is limiting access to just few of the people, he asked him to come to Medina. He came to Medina, and then he gave him some sheep, and he gave him a stick. He said, go take him to a certain location. When he was going there, he asked him to call him back. And then he sent him a little further away with those goats. And then he called them back again. He did that 2, 3, 4 times. And then he continued on for days, and one of the reports talk about for months. And then when he continued to do that, then he brought him back. And he said, so you chose an inner circle and acquired the hammam. He said, so will you do it again? He said, no. So Umar said, okay, now go back and do your job. The job that you are assigned to. So he, of course, Iyad ibn Ghanam, he was a person who was good at his job, But because he was slipping, Umar wanted to make sure that he learns the lesson and does the job that he was accounted for. Similarly, Umar radiallahu anh, he used to make sure that if there is any of the governors, their wealth is increasing in an unusual manner. If the wealth was increasing in an unusual manner, he would make sure that all the wealth which was gained, which was unexpected, that wealth was taken away and put into Baytul Mal. Why? Because what happens here is, when somebody has a position and suddenly his wealth starts growing up, and I think we are all aware of, we are living in a time and era which is happening very fastly in front of our eyes. We see the news and we see that how, whether it's the president, whether the people around the president or prime minister, whoever, we see that the moment they gained the power, their wealth started multiplying. Forget about just increasing at certain rate. They start multiplying multiple folds. So Islam makes sure that nobody is abusing the power. So Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh, he kept track of any governor that was assigned the governorship. First he would measure how much wealth he had at the time he was assigned. And then if it was increasing too much, then he took the wealth away. And there were many of those governors from whom the wealth was taken away. One time even, to the point, he took half of Abu Bakr, not talking Abu Bakr, Abu Bakr is a different Sahabi, his wealth. And Abu Bakr objected. He said, I did not do any work for you. I'm not even governor. I'm not your wali, nothing of you. Why are you taking half of my wealth? So Umar's response was, but your brother is in charge of Baytul Mal and he has been lending you money with which you engaged in trade. See that? He's not even taking the money. But there is a favoritism is going on. That one person is getting the loans and he's making wealth on top of it. See, this is the justice that Islam provides. This is what we are missing today. When we are studying or listening to these talks about, whether it's about Umar al-Khattab or we covered about Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anh, the purpose of learning that is, first of all, to learn who are we connected to. This ummah is connected to these giants. These are our heroes. And these things are all doable. Those Sahaba that we're talking about, they were from the people, if you look at their lives, that from the Arabian Peninsula, compared to the rest of the world was nothing. Compared to the rest of the world was nothing. There were two huge superpowers that were out there. And the Arabian Peninsula was so weak, and they became weaker and weaker by fighting among each other. Now, but Islam came, and Islam is the one that gave the strength to the same nomad Arabs who were nobody, and they became the leaders of the world, right? Now, Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh, when he took the wealth from Abu Bakr, because his brother was the caretaker of Baytul Mal, and the wealth from the Baytul Mal was given as a loan to him and not to the others. It means there was a favoritism happened, and hence Abu Bakr, Umar was concerned that this is an unjust behavior undertaken by the brother of Abu Bakr, hence the wealth should be returned back to Baytul Mal. Okay. Now Umar also used, besides taking the wealth away, besides demoting people or removing the people from the task, sometimes he would just rebuke them, meaning he will send them the letter or bring them to him and rebuke them. And Amr bin al-As radiallahu anh was several times the occasions that he was rebuked. Similarly, Iyad ibn Ghanam, Khalid ibn Walid radiallahu anh, one of the greatest Sahaba of Rasulullah referred to him as Sayfullah, the sword of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, these are the Sahaba that Umar radiallahu anh, in his Khilafah, he was rebuking them, making sure that any kind of an error, any kind of a mistake, or any kind of a chance of that mistake will become a bigger mistake in the future, he wanted to stop the mistake right there. You know, it's like this. Any of you have played the golf? Okay. So when we play golf or any of the games like this, sports like this, basketball? Yeah? Okay. So you have a target and you try to hit the target. If your hand, instead of doing this, just a little bit of an angle happens here, which could be a 0.05%. But this 0.05% is enough for the ball to land way far away from the hoop. Similarly in golf, if you're trying to hit the ball from here to here, and at this point, if there's a small angle here, this small angle looks very tiny here. But if you keep that wrong angle like this, and the ball goes this way, now see that how far it went away? So Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh was focused on these kind of a minor details, even making sure that no minor detail will be, or mistake should be let go. Because this is the time which is very close to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Umar kept the Sahaba in Medina most of the time, unless they had to go for expedition or any of those things. But in general, he kept them close because he wanted to stabilize the Islam with the right thoughts as well. And we see that Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh was keen about making sure these mistakes are not, if they are made, then they had to be corrected right away. Okay. One time Umar radiallahu anh wrote to one of his governors when some people had come to him and he had given to the Arabs, and he did something came and he gave to the Arabs and not to non-Arabs. Now, of course, today we will say this is asabiya, this is favoritism, this is this or that. But we know that all this happens. Whether it's Arab or non-Arab, it could be this race or that race, or weak or strong, whichever permutation that we can go into. But we see that happen. So Umar says, it is sufficient evil for a man to despise his fellow Muslims. Because what did he do, the governor here? He distinguished between the Arabs and the non-Arabs. And he gave the wealth to the Arabs and he did not give to non-Arabs. And Umar made sure that it was rectified right there. Okay. Okay, now one part to remember here is, even though Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh, he ended up giving different kinds of punishments to many of the Sahaba. But what we find here is the connection these Sahaba and Umar had was very strong even then. Because the one who was criticized by Umar, or he tried to fix the mistake, they understood that Umar is doing for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not for his personal gains. Because it's not only these governors, when we were discussing about his family members, we know that how tough he was with his own family members as well. And even on the deathbed when Umar al-Khattab was on, when Sahaba were suggesting, make Abdullah bin Umar, nominate Abdullah bin Umar, being one of them. And Umar made sure none of his family member should be the one nominated from him. So this is why the Sahaba, the one who probably sometimes you feel like that it must be tough on them. And I will talk about his relationship with Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anh next week, because we don't have time today, because that's another complete subject of his own, that how he dealt with Khalid bin Walid. Because Khalid bin Walid, just to let you know and highlight of it, it has been used and abused by Orientalists and the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to create friction among the Muslims by showing that as if Umar and Khalid bin Walid had some sort of a friction or conflict with each other, and they had some hate or love relationship in a bad way. That was not the case, and inshallah when we look at the historically, we'll be able to see it. But what we see here is, they love Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anh, and all those people who were even demoted or punished sometime or taken the wealth away, they were eased with Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anh, because for them all of it was connected to the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So today when we talk about we need Islam back, we need Islam back that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And that's the only thing out there. This is the only way of life that can protect the mankind. It is not for we were trying to say, oh, this is an Arab thing, or non-Arab thing, or Desi thing, or Pakistani thing, or Bangladeshi thing, or Egyptian, or Saudi. No, it is from Allah Azza wa Jal. And that's from Allah, the one that can really save the mankind which is getting closer and closer to the destruction because of lack of Islam. It's not because of Islam, as unfortunately media tries to portray and paint a picture which is not a true picture. And this is why we have to learn our deen. So when we call the people towards Islam, we should be clear about what we're calling for. Okay, well, inshallah, we'll stop today's talk here. If there's any questions or comments about the talk, inshallah, I'll try to answer them. If not, inshallah, we'll meet next week. Jazakumullah khairan. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.